Hey, I know. Hey, everybody. What's up? We're back. It's those wrestling girls. It's your girl, Krista B.
And Queen PR.
And today is a long overdue.
So
overdue, really highly anticipated from us. Something that we've been wanting to do since like day one. Like this was like one of our first episode ideas.
We were like, we gotta do
when
this
we were
one.
brainstorming, we didn't know how to categorize them, no anything, and we was just like, no, we have to do this one. This has to be up there. So we're finally doing our spotlight episode on the ninth wonder of the world, Chyna. The late great Chyna. It sucks I have to put that in front of her name.
Know, right?
It sucks. I have to put that in front of her name. But yes, it's like I said earlier, it's long overdue.
I'm so excited for this one. I haven't said that in a while.
You haven't.
But I like really am because we were like excited like all day. Like
all day
God,
texting
Chyna.
each other like Chyna episode.
Okay, so then this is a good place to start. Why Chyna? Why does she mean so much to us? Why did we always feel like we needed to do an episode on her?
Chyna was kind of Chyna isn't mentioned as much. Like when you look back at wrestling interviews and acts, and the women talk about who their influence is and whatever, you'll hear Trish and Lita. You rarely hear anything about Chyna from what I've seen, what I've watched. And for me, Chyna was it. Like growing up, Chyna was it. Like she was even in DX. Like even though she was pegged as that bodyguard, quiet or whatever, and then going back and watching Attitude Era, and the first time she picked up a microphone and King goes, "Oh, she speaks."
You love that moment.
I love that. That's like one of my favorite moments. Yeah, that was kind of my thing. Like I love that. Like I love her. She always stood out. She was, I don't want to say she was like the black sheep of the women. Like she was the one who always hung out with the dudes. And that was me growing up. Like I was a crazy tomboy. I was a tomboy who dressed like a girl, just like Chyna.
But
like
still hanging out
with the guys. Like I'm little sis, even though I'm older than half of them. Like that was me. And for me to see that on TV, that's what, that's what she represented for me. So
totally. And
she was an inspiration to you too. So when we kind of bonded and came like, we love wrestling. Who's your favorite? I feel like we said Chyna and sync, like favorite female Chyna. Like so that's what she means to me.
Yeah, like when you said like they don't bring her up often, I feel like if you didn't grow up in the Attitude Era the way that we did, and you just kind of started watching wrestling like in the last 10 years, it's easy for you to be like, who's Chyna? Like, who's Chyna? Like especially if you don't go back and like watch and look. But yeah, she meant a lot to me and my sister growing up because she was like, and we talked about this a lot on our WrestleMania episode, and about how she was a part of the cool group. Like DX was the cool guys. Like guys wanted to be them, girls wanted to, But then you had Chyna. Like she was the female representation in that group, DX, and it was just like, okay, now we want to be like Chyna. Then she was beating up the guys. Like you said, the black sheep of the women. She didn't do anything. Like there is still no other woman like Chyna. Like
they tried to bring out Nicole Bass, R.I.P. to her. And that just kind of didn't work. And then you had, who was that black girl?
Somebody recently tweeted me about her too, because they was like, why didn't you talk about her in the Women of Color episode? I was like, I completely forgot about her.
Like in rewatching the Ruthless Aggression part, you see a clip of her, and that's it. And her name was Shaniqua. Her name, like they had Shaniqua, but then she was like kind of like a dominatrix type.
Yeah, they tried
enforcer. Like it never amounted to Chyna. I feel like that's where WWE dropped the ball at. But we'll get into that part a little bit later. But they definitely dropped the ball with her.
Yeah. So just a little bit about Chyna real quick, a.k.a. Joan Laurer. I'm saying that right?
I guess.
She was born in Rochester, New York. And I just want to say her birthday because she's a Capricorn like me. She was born December 27th. And she got into wrestling She got into WWE in 1996, but she was trained by Killer Kowalski, which was interesting to me because that's the same trainer who trained like Triple H and a whole bunch of people. And Triple H and Shawn Michaels convinced Vince to bring her in as a bodyguard, saying like DX needed a female or something to add to it. And Vince at first wasn't with it because he didn't think that anyone would believe that a woman is intimidating.
Right, of course.
So imagine.
Well, there was scenes where, they was giving Michael Cole wedgies. I wonder if they gave Vince one.
I wonder
if Chyna did it.
I hope so.
A good old wedgie.
I hope so. Do you remember her debut?
Yeah. She gets like she came through, I don't know if she came through the crowd or she came down the ramp, and Terry Runnels was just like, that was Goldust's wife at the time. Mm-hmm. So she was just like, trying to be the distraction or whatever, and next thing you know, she's being flung around like a rat. Like
rag
she's being
doll.
Dragged. I need to go back and watch that. It's on February 17th, 1997, Monday Night Raw. Well, that was the only thing that was there at the time.
Yeah.
Monday Night Raw.
That's before they had like a million shows.
Before they had like a million shows, you can't keep up. But yeah, you need to watch that. She was like, it was like David and Goliath, but this time Goliath won.
Yo, and it was shocking too because again, Chyna didn't look like anybody at the time. Like she was muscular, she had tall, a strong jawline, she had a strong face. Like it was like you were shocked when you saw it. You were like, oh shoot. Like, oh, okay.
And it was times when people didn't know if Chyna was a woman or a man.
I remember that growing up. I remember growing up, people used to say like she was a
trans.
Yeah.
And that word back then, it was transvestite. Yes. It wasn't never a transgender or transsexual. It was a transvestite. I'm so glad we got rid of that word because that just sounds really, really ugly.
Right.
But yeah, people thought that she was like a man and they would call her he, she. And Chyna went through a lot.
She really did.
She went through a lot.
She really did. Especially before like all the plastic surgery, and we'll probably get to that later. But she did have to deal with like that whole comparison to like being a man. And then that's interesting too because when I was reading up on her, she used to be in fitness competitions, but
she was a bodybuilder.
Yeah, but she never won because she was so much bigger than the other women. And so I'm like, even in that field, y'all still wanted a petite, feminine frame in a bodybuilding competition.
That's such an oxymoron,
right?
Like,
so I'm
how?
like, wait, Chyna kept losing because she was too muscular. Like, it just goes to show you like just what women have to go through in entertainment in general. But I thought that was interesting, and I really loved her with DX. Like, oh my god, like that was just so good. And then we talk a lot about her in our WrestleMania 35 recap episode because we were there when she got inducted into the Hall of Fame,
and we cried.
And yes,
we cried. Like there's no way that we couldn't cry
because we just knew like she deserved it for so long. And then there's also that sadness that like damn,
she wasn't there to see it, like, or to get a ring, or
Crazy.
Real sad.
Crazy. What's one of your favorite Chyna moments?
Oh, besides the she talks?
Yeah. You always bring that up.
Chyna always was one of the guys.
Yeah.
Like, even though when she was quiet, she still did things that you stood out, like when they all had to do like the 10 hut in the ring, and they all had to look, and Chyna had hit Billy Gunn or Road Dogg in the balls with the prop. Like even though she was quiet, her presence spoke volumes.
Oh my god!
So she really could command a room just by walking in it.
Yep.
So she was always with the shits.
Yep.
Always with the shits.
Yep.
Like I can't really pinpoint my one favorite thing about her because like she had it all.
Yeah.
She was athletic. She was strong. She was beautiful. She didn't give no fucks. She was really unapologetic. Yes. Shameless plug. But yeah, that's just what it was with her. And it's like, who gonna beat me? Who gonna test me, boo?
Right. No, Chyna was the definition of that because women couldn't stand up to her, and clearly men couldn't stand up to her. So that's a good segue into more of what makes Chyna different was the fact that she was in active competition with men, and it wasn't like a fluke and it was legit. Like she was she might as well have been on the men's division.
She was like she was that figure. She was really that segue into why we have a women's evolution now, because she literally stood her ground and standing up for women. If you guys go back to episodes to where she had her transformation, she started wearing sexier outfits, she slimmed down in places, and and she comes out and she's literally talking about, I'm a woman, I'm standing in this ring, don't sit here and tell me what to do, because, you know, it's men like you who treat women like, when she was working with Kitty and Deborah and when she was talking to Jeff Jarrett. And back then, I didn't realize, like, the whole thing of misogyny and being a machismo and all of, I didn't realize any of that. Like, I didn't understand it.
We were too young.
We were too young to understand it, or even probably too young to care. Yeah. But now, looking back at it, I'm like, Jeff, this motherfucker, what? Chyna, you better go ahead and regulate, you know. Yeah. It was just like, damn, like, women have come so, I know, so
because the fact that even was like a actual active storyline for so long too, like,
it was a good while.
Like, they could never have done that now, like, because he was like, misogyny was really like, they don't talk about it on WWE now, but that was the storyline, was that he didn't think women were good enough.
He believed women should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Yes,
and he talked about it all the time. And then I remember him bossing Deborah around and everything, and now that would be so uncomfortable and so like, what are you doing? The
ratings would definitely drop.
Oh yeah, boycott WWE, all that cancel culture shit, that would have been all there. But it is good that Chyna ended up winning. Like, looking back, it's like, okay.
First okay, so so Jeff Jarrett and Chyna have this feud. You know, Jeff Jarrett goes on, you know, I'm a man, men do this, women can't do that. And I believe it stemmed from because Jeff Jarrett had did something to Deborah, who was Stone Cold Steve Austin's ex-wife. And to make it up to her, she hired Miss Kitty.
Yes.
So Miss Kitty was like a Deborah mini-me, and Chyna was getting tired of how he was like treating the both of them. So she came out one day and was just like, yo, what are you doing? And that's where that whole feud and stuff started. So then they had what was it called? My famous match that I love to call
the housekeeping
match. Was throw everything, including the kitchen sink. And they did. They threw everything,
they
really did.
I remember even like flour being involved, like vividly. Like when I look back on it, I'm like, they really was like had a kitchen like match.
Kitchen setup. And Chyna ended up winning. It was for the Intercontinental title, which was like the most prestigious title during that time. And Chyna won, and she became the first Intercontinental Women's Champion, first and only.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that she won the belt twice. And was like co-champion with Chris Jericho, which I completely forgot about. I was like, oh,
and that was during their feud, because Chris Jericho had a feud with Chyna. He ended up breaking her fingers.
Yeah, yeah,
breaking her fingers. But you know, it looks real.
It's dope though. Looking back,
I think he really did, because she didn't have nothing on her hands when she was taped up. It was just her hands.
Yeah.
So I think he really did break her hands. Jesus.
And I think it's cool looking back.
Y'all fucked us up.
Mind you, we're like, what, 8, 9, 10 watching
y'all
this
fucked
stuff.
Us up.
And it's funny. I love that we're talking about her career, and she was able to be in a feud with someone that ended up being like so iconic, like Chris Jericho. Like, we didn't know, well, he was great back then, but like we didn't know now that he would be such a legend. And then other men, she defeated Triple H, Jeff Jarrett, like you said, Billy Gunn, Val Venus, British Bulldog. I forgot about that too. I was like, wait, that's a pretty good, like,
that's a good roster.
Yo, like, you beat the British Bulldog? Wow, that's crazy. And she was the first woman to be in the King of the Ring tournament.
She was,
which was cool. And at one point, she was the #1 contender for the WWF championship, like the men, like the official one. So I don't think any woman in WWE will ever, like, I think those history moments are like Chyna's. Like, I don't think anyone's ever.
And it sucks that they don't give her enough credit. Look how long it took them,
and it's like,
for them to recognize her.
Yeah, 5 years of the women's evolution, and there should have been like a special done on Chyna, in my opinion. Like,
so we're the first.
Yes, we'll use that. Yes,
and if this ends up anywhere on WWE's page, cut us our check.
No, seriously, because I think it was important, because you talk about women's history in WWE, but like you don't talk about Chyna and we're talking about all these things that she did. Everybody's talking about freaking Tessa Blanchard. Look at everything Chyna did in the men's division. Like, she did hold a title. She was challenging people. She actually beat men, like, like 1, 2, 3. And men, like we said, like, are legends these days. And, like, again, no other woman in WWE will probably ever even get close to that. You know, like, the Royal Rumble. Like, she was the first, like, that moment. And even just that
when
image
her
of her, of just, like, her
walking
coming
down,
out. Yes!
Like, I'm going to get him.
God.
How many people did she eliminate?
I know she eliminated Mark Henry.
Me too.
I'm not sure she eliminated any more people.
I think it was
that.
just him, and then somebody else eliminated her. I think Triple H eliminated her.
Yeah, because I think they were beefing at
and
the time.
And he yelled, "This is like a man's thing," or something. Something real misogynistic. Yo. Come on, Hunter.
The 90s, yo.
Oh, my God. Y'all fucked us up,
yo. For real, yo.
I'll be damned. I'll be so damned.
Yep. But that was cool. And then she led the way for, like, Beth Phoenix. Like, Beth Phoenix has mentioned her before as, like, a role model, because, like, Beth had to deal with the same thing of, like, her frame being, like, a little bit more muscular, and she was able to turn that into the glamazon. But back when Chyna was doing it, like, Chyna was just Chyna.
She was Chyna.
She was strong, she was
the
muscular.
ninth wonder of the world.
Yep, she was the ninth wonder of the world. And then I didn't realize, too, that where her name came from. So it was supposed to be, like, an ironic thing, like, referring to her as, like, fine Chyna, which is, like, delicate and fragile, but like, that's the opposite of, like, what Chyna is. Yeah. And I was like, where did Chyna come from? So I'm like, okay, I like that. Like, it's funny because, like, I've always been a Chyna fan, but I think I've become more of a Chyna fan after she died, because then you start to, like, really appreciate everything that she did.
And I feel like she didn't have a long enough run.
No,
she didn't have a long enough run.
If you think about it, wait, she signed in, what, 96? She left in 2001? That's only 5 years.
Yeah.
And she made that big of an impact in only, like, 5 years, which is crazy. Like, we're still talking about her. We still cried at Hall of Fame.
Yo, we cried at Hall of Fame.
Because they talked about her a lot.
They did.
We were surprised. Like, they dedicated a whole time to just talk about Chyna. We were like,
everybody teared up. X-Pac teared up.
Yeah.
Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, even Triple H.
Yeah.
And me and P over here, what's Stephanie doing?
We would watch,
we could literally
Stephanie
see
the
across.
whole time. Like, what's her reaction like? But she was into it. She was clapping and everything,
chanting, "Thank you, Chyna."
Yep.
I low key feel like, and I'm gonna air this. This is just my opinion. I guess this is like my little sound off on this.
Okay.
So the love triangle with Triple H, Stephanie, and Chyna. I don't even know how it still became a love triangle, because, you know, Chyna was doing the work with Eddie Guerrero at the time, or whatever, and then, you know, they were, but I genuinely feel like Stephanie didn't mean, and Triple H didn't mean for it to go the way that it went, and the way that it was handled, it really fucked Chyna up. Like, at the end, even though she looked as astute and brute and brolic as she did, she's still a woman. She still has feelings, you know. I don't want it to be like, oh, Stephanie was the home wrecker, or Stephanie came in and had Chyna fired or whatever, because we don't know what the situation. We don't know what really went down.
We'll never know what.
We would never know what really went down. It's sad that affected her in a way to where she never came back to wrestling, and she had to turn to other outlets for money, and you know. And then she was kind of shunned and outcasted.
She was.
For a long time.
It breaks my heart, too, because, like, when you're a wrestler, especially when you're in, like, WWE, like, that becomes your life. That becomes your family. That becomes your support system. And Chyna didn't have a lot of that. Like, she had a very hard upbringing. So then for her to find out that her boyfriend possibly is dealing with the boss's daughter, and then you bring it to the boss's attention, and then the boss fires you, that has to hurt. Like, that's something that would, and I'm sure it did with Chyna, like, that would follow me my whole life. Like, the way that they just dejected me like that. Like, and not only that, I was a star. Like, I did a lot for the Attitude. Like, Chyna did a lot for the Attitude Era. It's not like she was just some random person that's just like, oh, okay. It was just like Chyna was Chyna. Like, she was a big star, and they literally were just like, bye. And then you know how WWE does. They just act like you didn't exist. And, like, imagine how hurtful that is. Like,
that's hurtful. Like, for you to wake up for you to be sent to your hotel, your home, or whatever, and say, I'll call you, and never wake up to a phone call, then we come back.
Heartbreaking.
Like, her run was really short. Mm-hmm. And I know that's something that they have to deal with daily, or they try not to think about it, but they know that they have to because of the fact, like, yo, like, we dropped the ball on this. Like, we fucked up. And now it's too late. Yep. I remember, and I tell you this all the time, when I was working on my master's and my thesis for my master's degree, and I focused it on women's misogyny, body shaming, and stuff like that. And I had met the former head director of WWE at the time. I can never think of his name. Jimmy Noonan. Jimmy. So, and I was telling him how it was right after the first Women's Royal Rumble and how Stephanie first said Chyna's name. So before I said, you know, how was Chyna? Because, you know, she was the main one who stood out to me. And he was like, oh my God, Joni was the best. She was so sweet. He never said anything bad about her. She was so sweet. If you wanted to talk to her, she was very personable. You know, I miss her every day. You know, he's been with the company for like 10, 12 years before he left. So he got to know everybody. And, you know, he made mention of the storyline that turned real with the triangle. And he's just like, it was just really messed up. I said, so do you think there will ever be a chance that she'll be in Hall of Fame? He goes, to be honest, I do not, because of the porn that she did and how it was okay for the first one if she would have made it just a sex tape or whatever, but she started to pursue a career in it. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to put too much attention to any of it. But when I told him, I was like, well, you know how WWE gets, they don't mention stars or name drop until something's gonna happen. And he was like, that's true, and you're a real fan for noticing that. I said, I pay attention to everything. I said, but Stephanie McMahon mentioned her name at the Royal Rumble. Huge. And he was just like, what? I said, yeah. Wow. He's like, well, then there's maybe a chance. And then once we found out DX was being inducted, I texted him. I said, yeah, DX is being inducted with Chyna. And he was like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Oh, wow. Like,
imagine how many people that worked with her that have been waiting for that moment. Like, yo, she should have been inducted.
She should have. And I don't feel like, because you fucked me over, so I had to look elsewhere. Yeah. Like, the people don't understand. Like, I was watching this the Austin and Big Show interview podcast, Broken Skull, and Steve Austin said, you know, life after wrestling could sometimes come at you hard. Like, a lot of these wrestlers don't have anything to turn to, especially when it comes up so abruptly. Yep. And back then, it wasn't your choice. If you wasn't on TV, you wasn't getting paid, whether you were injured or not. So for you to just be let go like that and not be used, you're going to have to look somewhere else. Yeah. It sucks that it had to be that.
Yeah, it's hurtful. But then the other thing, too, that's sad about this situation is that, like, okay, let's use Austin as an example. He got out of wrestling. No one was shunning him. Like, he still had his community from the wrestling business as friends. Chyna didn't have that. They all cut her off, and she was alone. And, like, that, it breaks my heart. It's just thinking about it, it breaks my heart because, you know, when you're in WWE, especially during the Attitude Era, you gave everything. Like, you were on the road all the time. Like, you were putting your body on the line.
They didn't have the breaks that they do have now.
And then to be like, you're cut off. It's like, imagine how alone she felt. And, like, of course she went to drugs and alcohol to cope. Like, how else
everybody did. They were coping while in the ring.
Right. So it's like, how else do you deal with that? And then you get into like a toxic relationship with X-Pac, who had his own freaking issues, and then it's just a sad story. Like, when you think about her legacy.
I remember, I believe I watched something where it was just like Chyna was being passed around DX too, and I'm just like, how fucking dare you? How insensitive can you be? Like, and this is after she passed away. Like, not even while she's alive. Like, right when she passed away, like, how fucking insensitive can you be? How dare you sit here and say something like that to tarnish this woman's legacy? Like, you must be young as shit. And the only thing you know how to do is cope is by watching porn. Right. Because nobody's going to give you any.
Right.
Like,
and the thing with the porn.
And I can't say screw yourself because you've been doing it already. Right.
The thing about the porn, too, that, like, when like, over the years, that would disappoint me because, like, I had stopped watching wrestling around, like, 2004, maybe 2004. But you know, we've been fans of Chyna ever since then. And I used to watch like The Surreal Life and, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
And that right there, the celebrity heartbreak. What was it, Surreal Life that her and X-Pac was on?
Yeah.
Or the other one with Dr. Drew.
I know she was on both. I know she was on Surreal Life. I think that's when X-Pac was on, and then she later on was on Celebrity Rehab, and it was clear
I think it was Celebrity
on both
Rehab.
of those shows that she had issues, and it was really sad because when she was on Celebrity Rehab, she was in such denial, and it's just like, I don't know how else to describe it but heartbreaking, because it's just like this strong woman that we all look up to growing up, like this larger than life, you know, probably the most, I would say one of the most impactful women in WWE ever. And then you see her later on, and then she just seems like a heartbroken, like, little girl.
Like that piece.
Just trying to cope.
I feel like she was always trying to fit in and cope. And when she found that niche within WWE, it was taken from her.
Yeah.
It was taken
like
from
really, her. Really, really sad. And the thing about the porn that is just a little bit comical, because I try to find humor in these really sad situations. It's just like, she did a She-Hulk porn.
Yeah, I know.
And I was just like, girl, like how much did they pay you to paint yourself green? It's like, I laugh, but it's coming from like a disappointing place. Like, this is how far we've come with Chyna. Like, someone that was so revolutionary, like so iconic, you know. And then when we were young in the Attitude Era, and when you're young, you don't realize time. Like, time is not really a thing. But to think she was only active for 5 years, and she made this kind of impact, like short amount of time. And she really became like a star, like in like 98, 99 to like 2001. So what's that, like 3 years? And we're still talking about her, and she's still doing things that nobody probably will ever do. So like, real quick before we continue about her legacy, let's talk about her and Eddie Guerrero.
I love that,
because that's very heartwarming. I love that.
Like, oh my gosh, like, they're together now.
Yeah,
they are together.
They're
now.
looking down on us.
Like, they are together now. Yeah. Like, to Mamacita.
That was so.
I
cute.
love that. I love
and
that.
So.
It felt so real and organic.
Yes.
It really did.
Like, I'm thinking of moments of them looking at each other, like her with the rose in her mouth, and like, it would just work.
Coming out in the lowrider and the spray painted on the top.
That just worked.
But then, you know, essentially they broke up. They had to break them up. Right. And I'm just like, really?
Right.
And
I feel like watch them forever.
I feel like now thinking back, why break them up? Because Triple H was getting upset?
Who knows, yo?
Right. Like, but you went and you married the person you were supposed to be in a storyline with. It was only supposed to be just a storyline, and had 3 kids by them.
Right. But then it's so about the Hall of Fame thing. Like, in the past, like, TMZ asked Stephanie and Triple H once, like, do you think Chyna will be in like the Hall of Fame? And they both give like their politically correct answers, like, it's complicated, it's which I guess it is complicated when you got like a love triangle. No,
it's not complicated. It's the fact that they did not want to face the issue.
Yeah,
they did not want to face the hard reality that they were the cause of her. And I love Stephanie and Triple H, and you know, I'm fans of them, whatever, but being realistic, because this is what this is about being real, they were the cause to her downfall. Yeah. If they would have just left it as it is, and they would have whatever, or provided service, they were the cause of her downfall. It's true. For them to say it's complicated, they didn't want to face it.
They didn't want to be held responsible for it. And like, love triangles, they happen, it sucks, but to like fire her for it.
Right.
Is like again, like, that has to be hurtful. Like, you lost your job, you lost your boyfriend, you lost your friend group, you lost your support system, you lost your job. Like, it's so much. Like, how do you go from being on the road all the time and with your, you know, that camaraderie? Yourself. And then again, she was a top star when she left. So it's like, so she was probably getting treated better than before. She's probably making a little bit more money. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, bye. That's it. It's like, what do you do? Like, you cope with other things and you go on. Porn. Do you remember her storyline with Mark Henry? That was another romantic.
She was over that one. She was like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. All right, Mark, what do you, and she go, you got D-Lo? And they mentioned her too in the D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry, and The Godfather when they did their
Table for Three.
Their Table for Three, and then they did something else. No, it was Table for Three. And he was like, yeah, Chyna. And they talked about how much they missed her, how much they loved her, how much of it was a joy for her. Like felt really good being around her. Like she just had that spirit. And he was like, and she was like, you brought D-Lo as a driver? And Mark was like, that's not D-Lo. That's his cousin CeeLo. Like it was so funny, but I'm just funny. Like, bruh. Like
I like hearing stories like that though, because then it just because like we're talking about how it was so negative when she left, but I love hearing that other superstars loved working with her. Like she was like, you know, a pleasure to work with. Like that makes me happy. I was listening to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, and he talks about Chyna, you know, when it's necessary, and she didn't want to because she was wrestling men, and then they moved her into the women's division. They made her champion, and she started wrestling women. So she didn't want to wrestle women because she felt like
she was going to kill them. Yes,
that, and then what makes me special then? If I'm just you're gonna throw me into the women's division, and then so I'm just gonna dominate the women's division. Then how is that? Her thing was like, how is that interesting if no other women can beat me? You know, like where's the competition basically? But the men backstage were not willing to. They didn't want to put Chyna over, and they were just like, "That's gonna hurt my image. If a woman beats me, it's gonna hurt my image." Blah 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 blah. Which is so silly because you think about Chris Jericho and how dope his career ended up being, and like he lost to Chyna.
That's
like,
true.
So I always thought that was interesting too. So when she became champion for the first time, she beat Ivory. And that iconic purple outfit, that entrance with
the bazooka.
Yes. And so I didn't realize until I was watching some YouTube videos today, like, so that storyline came from her Playboy cover.
And Ivory was a part of Ivory, Val Venus, and Godfather was a part of that. No, what was it?
Right to Censor.
Right to Censor.
I remember their music. Like, oh, y'all really want us to hate you.
The censor sign will come up. Yeah, so they was just really on some, this is not for TV and da-da-da-da and yada, yada, yada.
That Playboy cover was iconic, though. I remember at the time being like, and again, being young, because we were young watching this, and like asking my dad if I could get the Playboy, just because I didn't know what Playboy was. I just know Chyna was on it. And I was like, can we get the Playboy with Chyna? And my dad was like, no. I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
I knew what Playboy was. So I didn't even ask.
I mean, I knew, but it was just like, it's Chyna, though. Like, let's get the Playboy. And then my dad's not about to buy a Playboy for his kids. So it was like, no. But that was a huge moment, especially because it's like a mainstream. Like Chyna became extremely mainstream. Like she crossed over. She was on the Howard Stern show.
She was acting a little bit.
She was in shows. Like she guest starred in a lot of shows.
The Rock
like,
from the Sun.
Yeah, like she. Oh my God.
Yeah, I used to love The Rock from the Sun.
You just threw it back.
I used to love that show.
Me
It took me forever to realize that they was from. Hold on, was it The Rock from the Sun? Because it wasn't fucking Earth. Anywho, don't matter.
See, I don't. I remember all of the scenes where they would be like on the roof. Like, I don't know,
looking up
why.
at the stars,
and I probably
talking to their alien.
I probably only watched that show because Chyna. Like, knowing myself, like I only probably watched it the first time because of Chyna, and then just like continue watching.
I should just watch it.
Is it on Netflix?
I don't know.
Sorry, but now you got me like,
I know, right?
I want to watch that show right now.
Like WWE back then with all the celebrities and stuff and different stuff, like different shows that we used to be obsessed with, like when The Rock and Mick Foley and Triple H and Big Show was on Saturday Night Live.
That was cool.
That was good. I think that was like the first set of exposure. And then you saw Chyna and The Rock from the Sun. And then you saw, The Rock was in that 70s show playing his father. So it was good to see that.
Yeah.
And I feel like Chyna was the only woman we saw because she was the only one that had that. Yeah. So.
And she was, and it's like, you can't not recognize Chyna because she has such a unique look. So it's just like, oh, she became a sex symbol even. Like, I remember when she first got her boobs done and Triple H and Shawn Michaels kept like, oh, we should be called, what was it? Triple DX or something like that.
And they kept looking and pointing and whatnot.
And then the funny thing is that she's just sitting there like nothing, like she doesn't have these gigantic new
new boobs on her chest.
Everybody had gigantic new boobs back then, though, to be fair. like literally everybody.
Every fucking body.
Yeah, but again, like all of these moments in a women's evolution, like the first thing me and Krista always say is like, Chyna should be here. Mm-hmm. Chyna should be here.
Like, imagine if she was still here and her music would have hit at the
Can't even think about it.
At Evolution or the Women's Royal Rumble.
Cannot even think about it.
Let that would have played and you would have heard "Don't Treat Me Like a Woman." Like a woman. Yo.
Don't treat me like a man.
You don't understand. Like, the way I screamed for Naomi when she came back at Royal Rumble, or the way I screamed for Becky winning at WrestleMania,
or when the Shield reunited in Brooklyn.
Oh yeah,
that was the best.
Oh yeah, I think I would literally blew my lungs and tonsils out if Chyna's music would have hit.
Did the Bellas come back that same episode, right? I mean, Brie, did she come back that same SmackDown we were at? Or am I talking about, okay. Mm-hmm. We go to a lot of shows.
That video just popped up on my Facebook too. I was like, guys, I was not to sidetrack, but this is where WWE becomes predictable. So Marisa Miz talking in the ring, Daniel's talking. She was like, you should be called Daniel Bella. And I was like, P, Bree's gonna come out. No, she's not. And I had my phone ready. I was like, yes, she is.
I was on their Instagram, and they're in Phoenix.
Yeah, she was so naive. And all you heard was Primo. I said, told you.
I think we should I was thinking about this. I think we should do a show where we talk about our favorite live show moments.
Oh, that's dope.
Because this is so off topic, but we've been to like almost 20 shows together in the last 2 years in New York. So yeah. Anyway, let us know. We should do an episode on that because we've seen some dope.
That should be a Patreon.
That should be a Patreon. That would be dope.
Okay. Anyway, back to Chyna.
So yeah. So some fun facts that I read about Chyna is that she learned how to play the violin and the cello growing up. So and it's funny because when she used to release these like weird videos towards the end of her life, she is playing music in a lot of them. So I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Maybe she's trying to find herself.
Yeah.
And trying to cope.
Yeah, that's what sad. Like the last 10 years of her life. That's what she looks like a lonely, heartbroken. And
I just wish somebody would have reached out to her. Like I know Mick Foley has had those conversations where she was just like he kind of felt guilty for not being there. But Mick Foley's going through his stuff too. Like he wasn't on drugs or whatever, but his body was banged up
like
pretty
you said
bad.
Before, post-wrestling hits you hard.
Yes, and mind you, he was still trying to wrestle. Yeah. The last time he got rejected, he was trying to wrestle. They were trying to set something up with him and Dean Ambrose, but he failed his impact test, so he couldn't. They was like, yeah, you're done. Like he needed a whole hip rotator, all of that,
and he still doesn't walk right.
I don't think he got the hip rotator.
Yeah, he put his body through a lot.
Yes. Thank you, Undertaker.
Right. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people wish they would have offered a little bit more support. You know,
that's why I feel like that's also a touchy subject because it's that guilt. Like, damn, I should have reached out.
And then if your company don't really mess with her, then it's like you get that fear of like, should I be associated with her? And then because she, was doing porn and stuff, it's just like, do I want to really reach out? And then I also hear on a lot of podcasts, but
that would have been good for her to come back for that Divas era. Yeah. To be honest.
Or like similar to like Karma, like, oh, the Divas. Well, I'm going to show y'all.
But I'm just talking about, but I'm talking about, because if you can have Edge and Lita have a sex on live TV, Chyna could have came back doing that. She was shaped like a diva.
She was.
Like she was tall, but she was considered a diva. She would have been considered a diva. Yeah. And she was doing porn during that era.
It's so bad too.
They literally dropped the ball with her.
So bad.
They could have put her in different. Even if it was like kind of an embarrassment, she would have been happy because that's what she considered
home. She would have been back in wrestling.
Yeah.
And then that would have evolved, like just like everything evolved. Like when Lita retired, she was like a whore. She was like her image. I mean, like as in WWE, like she was like in real life, a bad person. Yeah,
because they were dating in real life,
right?
Like, all
and
that
then.
Shit.
Now they don't,
they forget
she's
about
looked at as like, a legend, blah, blah, blah.
But
so
mind
I
you,
could
and
see
Trish and Lita retired 6 years after they debuted, like together. Chyna, I feel like Chyna for me would have been like that Ric Flair. Like, I'm going to make you retire. Like, you have to go. Yeah. Because you're not going to leave.
Because she has such a unique like, again, no one was like Chyna. She could have did that forever. Like, she could have been that one woman, 1 year she's in the men's division, 1 year she's in the women's division, and then if you want to build up a woman, have them go against Chyna. Like, they could have did a lot with her over these years, and maybe the women's evolution would have happened sooner if she had stayed. Like, there's so many what ifs, of course, but she deserved more when she was alive, and like that's what breaks my heart so much.
That's what they say. Always give people their flowers.
Yeah,
when they're here,
because it was like she didn't even exist. Like before what 2018. And then they announced her death, of course, in 2016. But before that,
and they just did a flash like of her on the screen.
Yeah,
they didn't do nothing like a flashback, no nothing. What they should have done.
Yep, I think she needs a WWE Network special or two. I think she should have a best of Chyna moments video. I think just to educate people, because you have young, like we're 30.
Wow.
But
not yet.
Some of us are 30.
Coming soon.
There's people that just started watching wrestling that are like in their teens, and they don't know the significance of Chyna. Like, we know because we were there, we watched it and whatever, but they don't know. And they're like, women's evolution, oh my God, Sasha Banks, all these people. But it's like, yo, before all of that, fuck all of that. It was Chyna. Right. And she stood alone. Like, she was it. Like, she had a unique look. She was with the coolest stable with DX. Like, she was included in all those iconic DX moments. Like when they had when
they invaded WCW.
Yes. She was there for that. Like, so many good moments. All of the raunchy stuff that DX was doing in the beginning of the Attitude Era, she was right there. Like,
right there.
I mean, although she wasn't talking
with the shits, she was with the shits.
I remember there's one scene where Triple H and Shawn Michaels is talking about a barbecue or something, and they have like this big baguette, and they're like, so like they position it to where like as if it's Chyna's, you know, and they're like, yo, Chyna, what you bringing to the barbecue, baby girl? I'm sorry, Triple H says it, and it's so funny because she. It just keeps a straight face the whole time. She's just like, and I'm like, how are you not cracking up laughing during this? And again, as a kid, all those jokes went over my head. But looking back now, I'm like, yo, that's hilarious.
That's funny.
Like, how could, like, yeah. Chyna was awesome back then. Like, awesome. She was. Oh, and she was very fluent in French and German, which was cool. And if she didn't go into wrestling, she wanted to do something like in the UN because she wants to like use her languages. I was like, that's really cool.
Well, she should have went there, to be honest, afterwards. But I feel like around that time she was probably 30 something. 30 probably. Yeah, she was probably like in her 30s when she got let go from WWE. So yeah, I mean, you're not thinking at the time you need quick money,
and then you're a celebrity trying to still be a celebrity, and that has to be really, really, really hard. And then at the time that she died, she was teaching English in Japan, which I thought was really cool too. And she has a couple degrees, and it's just like those, like, because wrestlers, especially for Krista and I in the Attitude Era, they seemed mystical. They seemed like they weren't real people. Like, they were like truly larger than life. And that's why I'm so glad that we got to watch wrestling without social media and YouTube and all that bullshit, because we got to actually suspend our belief and believe that the Undertaker was like this, like, mythical dead man that was like powerful and shit like
from
that
from Death Valley. Because trust me, my when I had my Game Boy Color to WrestleMania 2000 game, it literally read Undertaker Death Valley.
Yeah.
even in Nintendo 64. Remember the Nintendo 64?
Yeah.
It had that wrestling game, Undertaker Death Valley.
Yep. And I believed
Mankind, Parts Unknown. The Rock. His said Miami, Florida. Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know, Texas. Some of it was real. Other ones was just like.
But you believed it, and and like, so now that I'm getting older and I'm reading about who Joan Lawler is, I'm like, wow, like, just to see like the person behind it all. Like, you know, she was smart, she was talented, she was ambitious, clearly. So I really like enjoyed learning that stuff about her, and then you start to think like, oh damn, what if she would have did this after, or what if she would have did that after? And it did seem like she was getting her life back on track. Like, they were doing a documentary about her life at the time that she died, but unfortunately she ended up dying of like an overdose, which is literally like the worst case scenario. Like, it's like
worst case but expected because of the route she went down.
It's really, really, really sad. But Any other Chyna moments that you want to talk about that stick out really for you?
Crossed them all. The bazooka, her becoming the first and only women's intercontinental champion,
which she held for 62 days. That's a long time.
Because who's intercontinental champion? Oh, Braun Strowman. Like you forget.
These days you
forget.
Not as
intercontinental champion. Literally was the highest.
It really was dope.
And then it was WWF World Championship, like the highest. You know, her standing up for women.
That was cool. That was really cool.
She literally was a staple in everything. And it's like, there's not a lot of bad I can say, or I don't think I've ever said anything bad about Chyna. And growing up, I never said she like, man, nothing. Like, I used to get mad with my friends. She's a man. No, she's not.
I used to get mad too. I was like, no, she's a woman, and she will beat you.
Right, she'll beat you up.
Like, and it was good for us to see that, because a lot of the women at the time were not strong. They were beautiful. They got naked. They were valets to men. They were not like Chyna. Like, Chyna was their bodyguard.
Out in bathing suits.
Right. Like, she was their bodyguard. Like, she made sure nobody messed with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Like, she was the enforcer, I guess. Like, she's the one. And there's no woman that has ever been portrayed that way since. Like, at all. Like, again, you got your Beth Phoenixes, you had your Karma, you had your Shaniqua, but none of them made the impact that Chyna has, like, to this day.
Not at all.
Like,
and I don't think, and as much as we love the women's evolution, I don't think nobody, men or women, will ever fill her shoes.
No.
Will ever fill her shoes.
No.
They can try, and they will make their own lanes, and we be like, yo, that's history making. But they, and it's not even because they don't have the potential to. Restrictions and you know what the audience may want, or what somebody would management may want, may like and not like. So they wouldn't.
I agree. And the other interesting thing too is like, she was so solidified or believable that she was competing in the men's division that they never said intergender. They didn't need to. It was like, Chyna's Chyna, and she's fighting the men. That's it. Like, it's not like, oh my God, this is a woman and men's match. Oh my God, no. It was no, like, Chyna is competing for the Intercontinental Champion. It was never a question. It was just like, of course she is.
Another Chyna favorite moment, and I'll say this one, you can say your last one so we can wrap up, was when, and this was like my other favorite group or faction or whatever, Too Cool.
Oh, yeah.
When it was Chris Jericho and Chyna, and they were in the tag team with Too Cool, and it was Rikishi, it was Scotty Too Hottie, and Grandmaster Sexay, R.I.P. to him. And at the end, if you guys know, they will always dance. So they pull, it's like, once you put on these shades, like you get to dance. Right. And as soon as the shades go up, put your head down. And you start busting the move. And Chyna and Chris Jericho did that. I'm like, Chyna not going to dance. She not going to do it. Says bust the move. She bust the move. I think they had everybody dance except for like the main people, except for like Triple H and Rock and Undertaker and Kane.
But that was always fun when they were able to.
Kane did dance.
I think so too.
Why do I just picture? I think like the two ones that stand out is Kane and Bubba Ray Dudley.
Yes,
because Bubba Ray Dudley bust the fucking move.
Yes, he
like
it's almost like he couldn't wait to dance with them.
Right. Oh, I can't. Is this damn dance? I'm gonna dance today. Yeah, that was him.
The Attitude Era.
Thank you for fucking us up.
Yo,
appreciate it.
So much there.
So much there. Like, when I start going to see a therapist, I will say how much the Attitude Era fucked me up.
I'm like, so wrestling.
Wrestling did this to me. Yeah.
Yep. But I'm so glad that we were able to do an episode on Chyna. Like you said, it was long overdue, and she still has like such a special place in our hearts.
Of
like,
course, always.
And we always say like we wouldn't even want to do this podcast like if it wasn't for the effect that Chyna had on us growing up.
Right.
You know, and I'm so glad that we were able to witness her induction last year in New York. The other
no. In Brooklyn, to be exact. New York. Thank you. Sorry, P.
We saw a lot of dope stuff in Barclay. I can't even hate on Brooklyn like I normally do because we had some really dope stuff that we witnessed in Barclay. Yep. But yeah, so I don't really have a lasting, like another favorite moment. I think I just want to I guess just thank Chyna, I guess, just for like everything that she did for, you know, us and just for young girls that were watching wrestling. The fact that we had a woman on TV that wasn't objectified, she wasn't just a sex symbol. And even when she did become a sex symbol, she was still fighting men. Like, she was still strong. She was still intimidating. She was still all of those things. I don't remember her participating in a lot of bra and panty matches and all that dumb shit. Like, I feel like she was saved for, like, real matches. And I think it was important for us because the Attitude Era fucked us up. It was good for us to see a woman
That's our new slogan,
like that, you know? So, yeah, so Chyna, we love you. Thank you. And
we hope you and Eddie are watching.
Yes, we do. And we hope you get inducted solo because it's just such a charade for them to keep talking about this women's evolution and not to give Chyna like her rightful
induction.
Place. Yeah. Or even just a document, like something.
Give
like,
us something.
Let's give Chyna some
Stop
shine.
playing.
Yeah.
Stop playing. Give us something. Well, on that note, it's your girl, Krista B.
And Queen PR.
And those wrestling girls are out.